Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Guys, feels like it's been a while since I've done a vlog outdoors, mainly because we got a puppy last year, but I've taken the opportunity today to get out and I've come to a lesser known part of Portland, or lesser known to me. We always come to Portland, drive through everything and then get to Portland Bill and the lighthouse at the end, completely ignoring everything else in its area. And where I'm filming this now actually is a place called Toot Quarry, and it does feel quite quiet, so I'm hoping that we don't get disturbed, or because I'll, like Thomas Heaton, feel a little bit embarrassed talking to a camera with other people around. But I was trying to get into a place where you can see the amazing backdrop in front of me and behind you. I'll just flip the camera around so you can see this absolutely amazing view from this quarry here in Portland, Dorset. And you probably might be able to detect something which sounds like African music in the background to this video as well, because down way down on the beach below me there is a band playing. So apologies if I'm not coming over too clear, but hopefully I can boost the audio in post. So yeah, so that's the introduction out of the way. So what am I going to talk about and show you today? And I do apologize for this one as well. I am technically sat down on the job, and I'll put up some b-roll now of where I'm actually sat, but where I just shown you, I've actually walked up from there today, so I'm a little bit tired, and I'm glad it's all downhill on the way back to the car. But anyway, why am I here? So about a month ago I decided to buy a Sony A7S. So here it is here, the Sony A7S Mark I, and attached to it here, if you can't quite see it, Sigma's MC11 mount, and that basically means I can use my Canon 5D lenses in theory on this particular mount and maintain that autofocus control. And I have tried it now, and it does work on the 28-105 and the 70-210 that I've got, but it doesn't really work at all with my 50mm f2.5 macro for the Canon 5D. It just constantly hunts and never locks on to a target. But with the other two zoom lenses, it does eventually, I say eventually, it takes a few seconds to acquire focus. But then when it does acquire it, I do find in most cases that it produces a very good looking and sharp image. Anyway, so while I've got the Sony A7S, I thought I'd pit it today against the camera that I have those other lenses for, so the venerable Canon 5D Mark I right here. So I think there's probably about a 10-year gap between the two cameras, both full frame cameras. Obviously the Sony A7S is a mirrorless camera, whereas the Canon 5D has got a mirror and is what is known as a DSLR. Right, so why on earth did I buy the Sony A7S Mark I? Because I think they're up to about Mark IV or Mark V even now, and then you've also as well got the Sony A7C and the A7C Mark II. So why did I go for the Mark I? Well, the Mark I, so I didn't go for the C variants because the viewfinders in those are quite small, and I feel like with the Canon 5D I've been spoiled with much larger viewfinders. Admittedly, the Canon 5D is an optical viewfinder and the A7S and my other cameras are electrical viewfinders, but I do really enjoy using and composing images through a larger EVF. The other thing why I went for the A7S is because for a while it was probably the lightest, smallest, mirrorless full frame camera. So that really appealed to me, because obviously with my micro 4/3 cameras, I like the fact that they are generally lighter and compact. And whilst I admire Panasonic in sticking with the format and bringing out the G9 Mark II, that camera is absolutely massive and heavy. So I much prefer lighter camera bodies. Although even though the 5D is heavy and bigger, I do quite like using that camera for its particular grip. I've just spotted someone, so let's see whether they take any interest in me. Right, so yeah, so another reason why I got the Sony A7S is because I saw some videos now, and a lot of people make note the fact that the old vintage lenses look really good with full frame cameras, because basically you're using the whole of the lens rather than just a small portion for it on my crop sensor cameras. So, and this is my Olympus Pen F 38mm f1.8 for my Pen F film camera, half frame film camera, and this has got an adapter, so it'll work with the E-mount. And yeah, and I have shot with that, and it does produce some amazing images. And I actually find the manual focus on this quicker than waiting for the autofocus on the Canon EF lenses that I attach. But eventually they do lock, and like I said, they do produce a really good image. Probably one of the best YouTube videos I've ever seen by a guy called GxACE, and he basically sold it the fact that the A7S is basically like a lightweight, compact Canon 5D. So obviously, me owning a 5D, I really wanted to give that a try, because even though I do love using the Canon 5D, that weighs a whopping 900 grams. So the A7S is almost half as light again. So obviously the downfall is that the lenses I'm using at the moment are quite chunky and quite heavy. But obviously, if I get on with the A7S, then I can look at expanding its range of native lenses. And I understand the Samyang lenses are pretty good, and they weigh not a lot. So I'll definitely be looking at adding some of those to the collection. Although, like I said, another thing that GxACE mentioned was that the Sony A7S is basically his platform for trying out all his manual focus lenses. And so far, I've tried my Konica lenses and, like I said, my Olympus Pen F lenses as well. And then I'm also going to be looking at trying my Olympus OM lenses as well. And I absolutely do chime with his experience that it is really good fun to use a full frame camera and some of the old vintage lenses, because yeah, with the advent of magnification and focus peaking focus aids, it really does help you nail that critical focus. And I find with the Sony A7S, even if I don't quite nail the shots, I still get some really interesting results. And I'll put up a few examples now of where I haven't nailed the focus, but so what, I've produced to me anyway a really nice interesting shot. So like I said, this video now is all going to be about me just putting up some comparisons of the same shot taken with both cameras. So it'll be a fair fight, because I'll be using the exact same lenses on the Canon 5D as I will do on the A7S. Well, the two for me that work, which is the 28-105 and the 70-210. So I'll just show you quickly how long it does take to acquire focus with that lens on the Sony A7S. Right, for this test I'll move so I can focus on something a bit more interesting than a blade of grass. So we'll focus on the chair that I've just been sat on, which just looks like it's come out of Game of Thrones. So let me just swizz the camera around a minute. Right, so here we go with the 5S. Right, let's get that ready. Let's try and get them lined up. So there's the chair. Right, let's begin focus. Yeah, so I don't know how long that is. Let's just count. Should we say about 4 seconds to acquire focus? So yeah, I feel like sometimes I could probably achieve that quicker if I manually focus, but it is nice to have that assurance that the image will come out pretty sharp. So all that's left for me to do now is just to get on with my photo walk today and take some more images. So what I'll do is I'll put up the B-roll for this location that I'm at today, and then obviously I'll put the comparisons up when they appear in the film, and then I'll do another segment at home where I compare some of the images I've taken and just draw some conclusion as to whether I can achieve the same great images from the Sony A7S as I can with the 5D, because certainly recently when I've been editing some images from the Canon 5D, I just really love the fact that I barely have to do anything with them in post-processing. The images come out looking so good, and I really do admire that. I really do enjoy using the camera because of that. You just get great results most of the time. So yeah, I've obviously used the Sony A7S for a few weeks now, and whilst I do appreciate, like I said, the size, the weight, not so much with the big lenses on, but yeah, I would just be interested in a straight comparison just to see whether it has the same image qualities as the Canon 5D. And then obviously as well, this is my second Canon 5D that I've had, and then obviously the A7S is the first time that I've been using it. So there will be some more videos down the line where I just talk more about the cameras and my experiences. This video today is purely about just comparing the output to see whether in fact that the Sony A7S is indeed a lighter and more compact Canon 5D. So let's get on with it. Right, so I'm back home now. I hope you enjoyed that footage and the images that I was able to capture down at Portland. I was just going to take a look at a few more of those images in detail and talk you through some of my thoughts. I tended to find that I still prefer the straight out camera look from the Canon 5D for pretty much every image that you've just seen. I tended to find that the Sony erred towards more green tones. They weren't as natural as those were from the Canon 5D. So that meant obviously when you take that into Lightroom that you needed to then edit them a lot longer. I found the Sony A7S files to get them to a finished article. So I did intend to try and match the Sony A7S output with the Canon 5D, but as I started going along, I obviously found that the 5D and its natural tonality was almost what I was looking for in the final image anyway. And despite trying to focus on exactly the same subject in each composition, I found generally that the Canon images came out a lot sharper, even though that the aperture and the shutter speeds were broadly similar between the two cameras. Whether that's to do with the fact that it was adapted glass on the Sony A7S, but when I've used it in isolation, I have been pretty impressed with how well the Sony uses the Canon EF lenses, albeit from my demonstration earlier, it does take a while to lock on focus. So is it worth then getting the Sony A7S to basically replace the Canon 5D if you feel that the Canon 5D is a little bit too big and heavy. So at this point in my time with the camera, I probably won't be looking to replace the 5D with the Sony A7S. But there are other reasons why I think I'm definitely going to be holding on to this camera for the time being. One of those reasons is obviously this camera has the S designator in the A7 series, and that's for sensitivity in low light. What I've found with this camera is you can take it out and shoot in near dark conditions and it will produce a lot cleaner images compared to my other cameras. So it's definitely worth keeping for those scenarios, and I'll put up some images now of some of the images I've captured which have been shot at extremely high ISOs, which I wouldn't even go near with some of my other cameras, especially my Micro Four Thirds cameras, which I find are okay up to about ISO 6400, but even then they still need a bit of denoise treatment. But with this one you can go much higher and still retain a nice, pleasing and clean image. And the second reason why I'm going to be holding on to this camera is, as you can probably see, I've actually adapted a vintage lens to this camera, and I've probably bought about 4 adapters now for literally 10-15 quid each to suit my M42, my Olympus OM and my Olympus Pen F vintage glass. And yeah, I just find this camera is brilliant for using vintage lenses on. So this lens at the moment is a Yashica 50mm f1.7, and I'm quite enjoying it at the moment because shot wide open it does give subjects a nice glow. But I definitely do like the look of the images I get with that little tiny Pen F that I showed earlier on in the video. Yes, it does create a bit of a vignette, but I almost think that adds to the vintage feel of the images that lens and then this camera produce. I did try using manual lenses on the Canon 5D, and I even bought a special focusing screen, what they call it, an EES, which took some time to actually find one of those screens, which seem to be very hard to get hold of these days. But even with the right screen and the adapters with my Canon 5D, I found that actually trying to achieve that critical focus to be extremely difficult, because the Canon 5D camera is so old that you haven't got any modern focusing aids like you have with these cameras. Like this one has focus peaking, and you can magnify into the image, into the subject, into the composition to nail that critical focus. Whereas with the Canon 5D, you're just relying on what you see and tuning the focus of each lens to the point where you feel that it is in focus. And even though that EES focusing screen for the Canon 5D works a lot better than the default screen, I still have trouble nailing that focus, whereas generally with the A7S I don't have so much trouble. So I'll just put up some of the images that I've captured using manual adapted lenses on the Sony A7S. But because of those two reasons, the low light capability and the vintage lens adaptability, I'm definitely going to be holding on to the Sony A7S for a little while longer. So that's it for this video. I'm definitely obviously going to be looking at the A7S and the 5D, my second 5D, again down the line, and I'll do some more videos on the cameras when I get around to it. So that's all for this one. As always, thanks for watching. Bye for now.